My name is Albert, 63 years old, and I recently retired after 38 years working at the local auto factory. This Father's Day, my daughter Melissa gave her father-in-law Frederick a $12,000 cruise package. She gave me a $3 lottery ticket. I was hurt, but then something incredible happened. That ticket won $130 million. Life has a strange way of teaching lessons about appreciation and value. If you are watching from your phone, hit that like and subscribe button to follow my story about how I taught my daughter a lesson about gratitude she will never forget. I still remember my first day at Walker Auto Assembly Plant back in 1985. I was 25, newly married to my sweetheart Lisa, and eager to build a good life. The factory smell of oil metal and honest sweat would become as familiar as my own home over the next 38 years. I never intended to stay that long, but life has its own plans sometimes. When our daughter Melissa was born 2 years later, everything changed. Holding that tiny bundle in my calloused hands, I made a silent promise that she would have opportunities I never did. My father had been a factory worker too, and while he provided, there was never enough for extras or education. I wanted more for my little girl, so I worked. God, how I worked. 60-hour weeks became normal. I volunteered for every holiday shift because of the extra pay. The midnight to 8 a.m. schedule was brutal on my body, but it paid 15% more, so I did it for 7 straight years. My back began giving me trouble in my 40s, but I kept going. What choice did I have? Lisa worked part-time as a school secretary when Melissa started kindergarten. Between our 2 incomes, we managed to buy a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood with good schools. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. We scrimped and saved, putting away whatever we could for Melissa's college fund. I missed things. Too many things. Piano recitals when I was pulling double shifts. Parent-teacher conferences when I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open. Family vacations we could never quite afford because every extra dollar went into that college fund. My hands grew calloused and my back more hunched, but I told myself it was worth it. Melissa was a bright kid, top of her class, involved in debate club and student government. When she got accepted to Westmore University with a partial scholarship, I felt like all those missed moments might have been worth it. The scholarship helped, but we still had to come up with $25,000 a year. I refinanced the house, picked up weekend work at a local hardware store, and somehow we made it work. Lisa would say, "Albert, you are working yourself to death." She worried, but she understood. We were a team. We wanted Melissa to have the chances we never did. I remember dropping Melissa off at her college dormitory. The campus was beautiful, all ivy-covered buildings and tree-lined paths. So different from the community college I attended for 1 semester before money ran out. As we helped her unpack, I noticed the other parents. They drove newer cars, wore nicer clothes, talked about their vacation homes and European trips. I felt out of place in my 10-year-old sedan and department store clothes, but I stood tall. My daughter was there, same as theirs. 4 years later, I watched with tears in my eyes as Melissa accepted her business degree. All those overtime hours, the constant ache in my lower back, the vacations never taken, they crystallized into that moment. My girl, a college graduate, first in our family. Lisa squeezed my hand during the ceremony. "We did it," she whispered. "We did. Together." 2 years after Melissa graduated, Lisa started feeling tired all the time. The diagnosis came like a thunderbolt. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 4. Those final months with Lisa are a blur of hospital rooms, medication schedules, and quiet nights holding her increasingly frail hand. Melissa came home often during that time, putting her new marketing job on hold to be with us. In those painful days, we grew closer than ever. When Lisa finally slipped away, Melissa and I clung to each other at the funeral, two survivors in a storm. After Lisa died, our modest house felt enormous and empty. Melissa suggested I sell it and get something smaller, but I could not. Every corner held memories of Lisa. The kitchen where she danced while cooking Sunday dinners, the backyard garden she tended so lovingly, the bedroom where we had whispered our hopes and fears to each other for decades. I stayed. I kept working at the plant, though I scaled back the overtime. Without college tuition to pay and with Lisa's small life insurance policy, I was financially stable for the first time in my life. Not wealthy by any means, but the constant pressure had eased. I even started taking better care of myself, finally getting that persistent back pain checked out. Degenerative disc disease, the doctor called it. The price of decades on the assembly line. Through it all, Melissa remained my pride and joy. She had landed a good position at a marketing firm in the city about an hour away. She visited every other weekend. We would watch old movies Lisa loved, order pizza, and talk about her job or my increasingly creaky joints. It was not the family I had envisioned with Lisa gone too soon, but we were doing okay, Melissa and I. Then Melissa met James. James Richardson came from a different world. His father, Frederick Richardson, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across 3 states. Their family lived in a mansion in the exclusive Lakeview Heights neighborhood. James had attended private schools, spent semesters abroad, and had never worked a job that his father had not arranged. Yet somehow James and Melissa met at a charity event and hit it off. When she first brought him to our home for dinner, I was nervous. Would this privileged young man look down on our modest house with its worn furniture and outdated kitchen? To my surprise, James was polite and charming. He complimented my barbecue skills, asked thoughtful questions about my work at the factory, and genuinely seemed to care for Melissa. I cautiously approved. Their courtship was brief. Within 8 months, James proposed with a diamond ring that probably cost more than my annual salary. Melissa was ecstatic, and I was happy for her, if a bit concerned about the speed of it all. When they began planning the wedding, the differences in our worlds became glaringly apparent. Frederick and his wife Patricia wanted to host the wedding at the Lakeshore Country Club. They talked about flying in a renowned chef from New York, hiring a band that had apparently played for celebrities, and inviting 300 guests. Melissa seemed dazzled by it all, while I felt increasingly out of place. "Dad, is it okay if they handle the wedding?" Melissa asked tentatively one evening. "They really want to, and they can afford to make it special." What could I say? I had set aside $5,000 for her wedding, my idea of a generous budget. The Richardsons were talking about spending 20 times that amount. "Of course, honey. Whatever makes you happy." I sat in the 3rd row at the country club, surrounded by people I did not know, watching my daughter marry into a family that lived in a different stratosphere. Frederick gave a toast about welcoming Melissa into their legacy of success. I had prepared my own toast, carefully written on index cards, but somehow there never seemed to be the right moment for the father of the bride to speak. After the wedding, Melissa and James moved into a house that Frederick had given them as a wedding present. It was in Lakeview Heights, just a few blocks from his parents. I visited once for a housewarming dinner and felt like I needed a map to navigate the place. 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a home theater, a wine cellar, for 2 people. That was when I began to notice the changes in my daughter. Small things at first. Her casual mention of the housekeeper who came 3 times a week. The way she pronounced certain words differently, more like Patricia. Her clothes became more expensive, her hair styled more elaborately. Our every other weekend visits became monthly, then sporadic. She was busy, she explained. Work was demanding, and they had so many social obligations with James's family and their new circle of friends. I understood, I told her. But sitting alone in my living room on quiet Sunday afternoons, I felt the loss acutely. When she did visit, I noticed her looking around our house with new eyes. She suggested updates I could not afford, commented on the retro appliances that were simply old, mentioned real estate listings for condos she thought might suit me better. This house was your childhood home, I reminded her. Your mother loved it here. I know, Dad, she would say with a sigh. But you could have something newer, easier to maintain. What she really meant, I suspected, was something less embarrassing when her in-laws asked where her father lived. I met Frederick Richardson several times after the wedding at holiday gatherings and occasional dinners. He was a robust man with a booming voice and expensive tastes. He seemed to enjoy telling stories about his business triumphs and dropping names of powerful people he knew. Whenever the conversation turned to me, he would adopt a sort of benevolent curiosity, as if I were an anthropological specimen. 38 years at the same factory, Albert. That is loyalty you cannot find these days, he once proclaimed at Thanksgiving dinner. I tell my managers all the time we need more workers with that blue-collar ethic. I smiled politely, while imagining how quickly Frederick would fire someone like me if I worked at one of his dealerships. Patricia was no better. She would pat my arm and tell me how refreshing my simple lifestyle was, as if I had chosen to forego wealth as some kind of spiritual practice rather than working my fingers to the bone just to make ends meet. The worst part was watching Melissa around them. How she laughed too loudly at Frederick's jokes. How she adopted Patricia's mannerisms. How she seemed almost apologetic when introducing me to their friends. My dad worked in manufacturing, she would say vaguely, as if specifics might reveal too much. On the drive home from those gatherings, I would remember the little girl who once proudly told her first-grade class that her daddy helped build cars. The teenager who never hesitated to invite friends over despite our modest home. The college student who hugged me tightly at graduation and whispered, "I did this because of you, Dad." Where had that girl gone, and when had I become someone to be embarrassed about? James was not unkind, but he existed in his father's shadow. He worked at the family business, drove the luxury cars his father provided, and never seemed to question the golden path laid out before him. I tried to connect with him over sports or current events, but our experiences were so different that conversations often fizzled quickly. As months passed, the distance between Melissa and me grew. Phone calls became less frequent. Visits were often canceled at the last minute. My texts sometimes went unanswered for days. When Lisa was alive, we had been a tight unit, the three of us against the world. Now I felt like an afterthought in my daughter's new glossy life. There were moments that cut deeper than others. When I had minor surgery for my back, and Melissa sent flowers instead of visiting. When she missed the 5th anniversary of her mother's death because the Richardsons had invited them on their yacht. When I heard from a former coworker that Melissa and James had attended a fundraiser at the plant, and she had not even told me they would be there. I tried not to be bitter. This was what I had wanted, was not it. For Melissa to have opportunities to rise above the limitations of my blue-collar existence, I should have been happy that she was successful, that she had married into comfort and security. But on lonely nights in the house that now held only ghosts and memories, I could not help but feel that somewhere along the way I had lost something precious. Not just my daughter's presence, but her understanding of where she came from, of what really mattered. Then came Father's Day. Father's Day had always been special for us, even after Lisa passed. Melissa would typically come over with a thoughtfully chosen gift. Nothing expensive, but always meaningful. A photo album of our family trips. A watch to replace my worn one. One year she framed my old factory ID badge alongside a father-daughter photo titled, "My Hero Then and Now." Those gifts and the day spent together were highlights of my year. This year, Melissa called 2 weeks before Father's Day. "Dad, we are hosting a Father's Day lunch at our house for both you and Frederick. Can you come?" I was surprised but pleased. "Of course, honey. I would love to." "Great. It will be on Sunday at 1. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends." As the day approached, I found myself increasingly excited. I had not seen Melissa in nearly 2 months. Plus, this invitation felt like a step toward bringing our worlds together. Maybe things were changing. I spent an hour picking out my clothes that morning. I settled on my newest pair of khakis and the light blue button-down shirt Lisa had given me for our last anniversary together. I even bought a new tie for the occasion, dark blue with small silver dots. Looking in the mirror, I thought I looked presentable, if not as polished as the Richardson crowd would be. I debated what to bring and settled on a nice bottle of whiskey for Frederick. Despite our differences, it seemed a goodwill gesture was in order. For Melissa and James, I brought a set of wind chimes for their patio. Lisa had always loved wind chimes. When I pulled my 10-year-old sedan into the circular driveway of their house, I was immediately self-conscious. The place was lined with luxury vehicles, including Frederick's signature Bentley. I parked at the far end and gathered my gifts. "Nothing fancy," Melissa had said. But when I entered, I found at least 30 people mingling in the massive open-concept living and dining area. Caterers in black uniforms circulated with trays of appetizers and champagne. A string quartet played in the corner. Most men wore designer suits and women were dressed like they were attending a high-end cocktail party. I stood frozen in the entryway, clutching my whiskey bottle and wind chimes, feeling painfully underdressed. Before I could retreat, Melissa spotted me. "Dad, you made it?" She air-kissed near my cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup. She looked stunning in an expensive-looking dress, her hair and makeup professionally done. "Let me take those." She accepted the gifts with a quick thanks and handed them to a waiting staff member before I could explain what they were. Then she led me through the crowd, introducing me with brief, "This is my father, Albert." No mention of my career or accomplishments, just my relation to her. I spotted James with his arm around an older man I did not recognize, both laughing over something. James waved but did not come over. Melissa guided me to a corner of the room where several older men were gathered. "Dad, you know Frederick? And this is Charles Johnson, he owns the regional bank chain. And Thomas Wilson, he is on the hospital board with Frederick." Frederick gave me a hearty handshake that felt more like a strength competition. "Albert, good to see you. Staying busy in retirement?" "I am keeping occupied," I replied. "Working on some house projects, volunteering at the community center." "Wonderful, wonderful," Frederick boomed, already looking past me. "You know, Charles here just got back from a fishing expedition in Alaska. Caught a 60-pound salmon." The conversation moved on as if I were invisible. I stood there nursing a glass of wine while the men discussed exotic trips, investment strategies, and people I had never heard of. Eventually, I excused myself and found a quiet spot near the patio doors. The lunch itself was an elaborate affair. A buffet offered prime rib salmon and various gourmet sides. Crystal glasses and fine china adorned the tables. I sat at a table with several couples I did not know, making awkward small talk until they resumed conversations that excluded me. After lunch, Melissa called for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate these amazing fathers in our lives. Now it is time for the special part of our day." My heart lifted. This was the Melissa I knew, the thoughtful daughter who valued family occasions. "First, I would like to honor my father-in-law, Frederick," she continued. Frederick, you have welcomed me into your family and shown me what business excellence and leadership look like. James and I are so grateful." James appeared with a large, elegantly wrapped box, which Frederick opened with a flourish. Inside was an envelope, which he removed and read aloud. "A 2-week Mediterranean cruise for two on the Diamond luxury liner Executive Suite package sailing from Barcelona, with stops in Monaco, Amalfi, Santorini, and more," Frederick announced, beaming. "This is extraordinary. Patricia, pack your bags." The room erupted in applause. Someone mentioned that the executive suite packages started at $12,000 per person. Patricia hugged Melissa, while Frederick clapped James on the back. Cameras flashed as they posed together. "And now," Melissa said, turning to me with a smile that suddenly seemed strained for my dad. She walked toward me with a small envelope. The room grew quiet as she handed it to me. It felt light, almost empty. "Happy Father's Day, Dad," she said. I opened it, trying to maintain a neutral expression. Inside was a single scratch-off lottery ticket. $3. "It could be a winner," Melissa said with forced brightness. "You always said someone has to win, right?" A few awkward chuckles rippled through the room. I saw Frederick smirk and whisper something to Patricia, who covered her mouth to hide a laugh. James looked uncomfortable, staring at his shoes. The contrast could not have been more stark or more public. A $24,000 cruise package versus a $3 lottery ticket. In front of everyone. On Father's Day. Shame and hurt washed over me in equal measure. I wanted to ask if the 38 years of backbreaking work, the refinanced house, the missed vacations to pay for her education, the decades of sacrifice meant so little to her now. I wanted to ask when I had become worthy of only the most minimal, thoughtless gesture. Instead, I smiled. "Thank you, Melissa. Very thoughtful." I tucked the ticket into my shirt pocket next to my heart that was breaking all over again. The party continued around me, but I was numb to it all. I made polite excuses about not feeling well and left early. Melissa barely noticed, busy attending to her other guests. Frederick called out, "Hope that ticket makes you rich, Albert," followed by booming laughter from his friends. The drive home was a blur. Inside my empty house, I sat in my recliner, still clutching the lottery ticket. I thought of Lisa, wondering what she would say about our daughter now. Would she understand Melissa's transformation better than I could? I placed the ticket on my side table and went to bed early, though sleep did not come until the early hours of the morning. When it did, I dreamed of factory assembly lines that never ended, and a daughter who kept walking further away, no matter how fast I tried to follow. I forgot about the lottery ticket for 3 days. It sat on my side table, a small white rectangle that I actively avoided looking at. Every glance brought back the humiliation of that Father's Day lunch, the stark display of where I stood in Melissa's priorities. On Wednesday evening, I was watching the local news, barely paying attention when the lottery segment came on. I almost changed the channel, but something made me pause. As the announcer read off the winning numbers for the Mega Millions draw from Tuesday night, I remembered the ticket. More out of bitter irony than hope, I reached for the ticket and a coin to scratch off the covering. I uncovered the numbers mechanically, expecting nothing. The first number matched, then the second. By the third match, my hand was trembling. Fourth, fifth, and the special mega ball, all matching. I checked and rechecked the numbers on the screen against my ticket. They were identical. According to the announcer, there was a single winning ticket sold in our state for the $130 million jackpot. I held a winning lottery ticket worth $130 million. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the arm of my chair to steady myself. Was this some kind of cosmic joke, the $3 afterthought gift from my daughter, given with such casual disregard, was now worth more than anything, the Richardsons could ever give her. I called the lottery office the next morning, as soon as they opened. The woman who answered confirmed that a winning ticket had been sold at the convenience store where Melissa must have purchased it. She explained the process for claiming such a large prize, advising me to sign the back of the ticket immediately and keep it in a secure location until I could bring it to the main lottery office. "You have 180 days to claim your prize, sir," she said, "and I strongly recommend consulting with a financial advisor and attorney before coming in." I thanked her and sat at my kitchen table staring at the signed ticket now sealed in a Ziploc bag. My first thought was to call Melissa, to tell her that her Father's Day gift had made me a multi-millionaire. I even picked up my phone but then stopped. What would happen if I told her? Would she be genuinely happy for me? Or would she immediately start thinking about what it meant for her? Would Frederick suddenly find me fascinating, worth listening to? Would the same people who had barely acknowledged my existence at the Father's Day party now seek my friendship? I put the phone down. I needed time to think. I drove to the bank and rented a safe deposit box for the ticket. Then I called Frank Stevens, an attorney I knew from the community center where I volunteered. Frank specialized in estate planning and had helped me with my will after Lisa died. He was discreet and trustworthy. We met that afternoon in his office. Frank's eyes widened when I showed him the ticket and explained the situation. "Albert, this changes everything for you," he said. "After taxes, you are looking at around $75 to $80 million if you take the lump sum. Or you could take the full amount in payments over 29 years. "I need your absolute discretion, Frank," I said. "I am not ready for anyone to know about this. Not yet." Frank nodded. "Of course. Attorney-client privilege. But you should know that when you do claim the prize, it becomes public record in this state. Your name will be announced unless you form a trust or LLC to claim it, and even that only provides limited anonymity." We spent the next 2 hours discussing options. Frank recommended several financial advisors specializing in sudden wealth management. He outlined the pros and cons of different prize-claiming strategies. He warned about the pitfalls facing new lottery winners, from investment scams to long-lost relatives appearing with sob stories. "Take your time," he advised as our meeting concluded. "This money is not going anywhere. Make a plan before you claim the prize or tell anyone." I spent the next week in a strange limbo. Outwardly, nothing had changed. I still lived in my modest house, drove my aging car, and followed my retiree routines. But inwardly, everything was different. I found myself lying awake at night contemplating possibilities I had never allowed myself to consider. I could travel the world, something Lisa and I had always dreamed of, but never managed more than a weekend trip to the beach. I could move to a beautiful home, perhaps on the lake, where Lisa and I had once picnicked during our courtship. I could establish scholarships for kids of factory workers, helping them avoid the financial strain that had marked Melissa's college years. Melissa called once that week, a brief conversation, where she talked about a charity gala she and James had attended. She did not ask about my early departure from the Father's Day lunch or how I had been since. I did not mention the lottery ticket. After consulting with Frank's recommended financial advisors, I made my decision. I would claim the prize through a revocable trust that offered some privacy protection. I would take the lump sum option, estimated at $78 million after taxes, and I would not tell Melissa or anyone else until I had established a clear plan for the money. The day I claimed the prize was surreal. Frank and his associate accompanied me to the state lottery headquarters. I wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, though the disguise felt ridiculous. The lottery officials were professional and efficient. They verified the ticket, had me sign numerous documents, and explained that the funds would be transferred to my trust's account within 2 weeks. They asked if I wanted to hold the traditional big check for a photo op. I declined. The press release would simply state that the $130 million Mega Millions jackpot had been claimed by the Second Chance Trust, a name Frank and I had chosen with a certain irony. That night, alone in my house, the magnitude of what had happened finally hit me. Albert Mercer, former factory worker, was now worth more money than I could spend in multiple lifetimes. And it had come from a thoughtless gift given by a daughter who had seemingly forgotten the value of everything I had taught her. I cried that night for the first time since Lisa's funeral, not from joy at my newfound wealth, but from the bitter recognition that money could change everything and nothing at the same time. It could buy comfort and security, but not the respect and appreciation I had truly wanted from my only child. I did nothing drastic for the first month after the money hit my account. I continued living in my house, driving my old car, and following my usual routines. I needed time to adjust to the reality of my situation and to formulate a plan. Frank connected me with a team of professionals, a financial advisor, an accountant, and a philanthropic consultant. Together, we mapped out a strategy for managing the windfall responsibly. First, I established a sensible budget for myself. Despite having millions, I had no desire for extravagance. I allocated funds for a comfortable but not ostentatious new home, a reliable car travel, and quality health care. The bulk of the money would go toward investments, charitable giving, and a trust for future needs. 2 months after winning, I began implementing subtle changes. I had my back problems properly treated by a specialist. I replaced my aging car with a new SUV, nice but not flashy. I started looking at homes in Pleasant Hills, an established neighborhood with beautiful properties that were upscale without being showy. I found a perfect house, a 4-bedroom craftsman on 2 acres with mature trees and a small pond. At $850,000, it was a fraction of what I could afford, but it was more than enough for me. The realtor seemed surprised when I paid cash, but I explained that I had sold investments for my retirement. As I prepared to move, I began donating most of my old furniture to local charities. The house would need new furnishings, but I kept certain pieces that had sentimental value. The recliner where Lisa and I had spent countless evenings, the dining table where we had shared family meals, the bedroom set we had saved for months to buy. I hired an interior designer who understood my desire for comfort over ostentation. The new house slowly took shape as a warm, welcoming space that reflected my personality while providing the comfort my retirement years deserved. Throughout this process, I maintained minimal contact with Melissa. She called occasionally, usually brief conversations focused on her life. I did not volunteer information about my improving circumstances, curious how long it would take her to notice. The answer came 3 months after my lottery win, when I invited Melissa and James for dinner at my new home. I told her I had moved, but gave no other details, just my new address. When their luxury SUV pulled into my circular driveway that Saturday evening, I watched from the window as both Melissa and James did double takes. They sat in their vehicle for a long moment, checking the address again. Finally, they emerged, looking confused. I greeted them at the door, enjoying their poorly concealed shock as they entered the house. "Dad," Melissa said, looking around at the soaring ceilings and custom woodwork. "What is this? How can you afford this place?" "I decided to make some changes," I said casually. "Would you like a tour before dinner?" As I showed them through the house, Melissa's expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. James seemed impressed, commenting positively on the craftsmanship and design choices. "Did you inherit money from someone?" Melissa finally asked over dinner. "Or, did you take out a mortgage, Dad, that would be a huge risk at your age?" "I have been careful with my money," I replied. "The factory pension is better than you might think, and I had investments that did well." She did not look convinced, but the subject dropped as we moved on to other topics. As they were leaving, Melissa hugged me, holding on longer than usual. "You will tell me if you are having financial problems, right?" she whispered. "This seems like a lot, and I worry about you." I assured her I was fine, touched by her concern, even as I recognized it was misdirected. She was worried I was being financially reckless, not that I might have come into money that she knew nothing about. After that dinner, Melissa began calling more frequently. She and James invited me to dinner at their house the following weekend. Frederick and Patricia would be there, she mentioned casually. The dinner was revealing. Frederick dominated the conversation as usual, but now he occasionally directed questions my way. "Albert, Melissa tells us you have moved to Pleasant Hills. Beautiful area. Which street are you on?" When I told him, his eyebrows raised slightly. "That is a prime location. Those homes do not come cheap." "I found something that suited me," I replied simply. "And you have retired completely from the factory, was it?" Patricia asked, saying factory the way someone might say sewer. "Yes, after 38 years. Remarkable loyalty." Frederick commented the same phrase he always used, but now with an appraising look. "You must have been higher up than I realized." "Just a line worker," I said truthfully. "But I saved and invested wisely." Throughout the evening, I caught Melissa and James exchanging glances. Frederick grew increasingly determined to understand my financial situation, dropping hints about investment opportunities and asking about my portfolio strategy. I kept my answers vague. As the weeks passed, I settled into my new home and continued working with my advisory team on longer-term plans. I established an anonymous scholarship fund for children of manufacturing workers at Melissa's alma mater. I made a significant donation to the cancer ward where Lisa had been treated. I set up a foundation to support vocational training programs for young people who, like me, might not follow the traditional college path. These actions brought me more satisfaction than any luxury purchase could have. I kept most of my giving anonymous, with Frank handling the paperwork through my trust. Melissa's attention increased in direct proportion to the improvements in my lifestyle. She began stopping by unannounced, often with small gifts. She invited me to social events, where she proudly introduced me to her friends. James started calling to ask my opinion on various matters from sports to current events. Frederick, too, became surprisingly attentive. He invited me to golf, though I had never held a club in my life. He suggested we get together for man-to-man talks about family business. Patricia suddenly remembered my birthday, sending an expensive watch I had no intention of wearing. I observed these changes with a mixture of amusement and sadness. None of them knew about my lottery win, yet my perceived improved financial status had transformed me from an embarrassing blue-collar father to someone worthy of attention and respect. It was a telling commentary on their values. 6 months after winning the lottery, I had fully settled into my new life. My health had improved with proper medical care. My new home was comfortable and peaceful. My charitable foundation was quietly doing good work. I had traveled to several places Lisa and I had dreamed of visiting, bringing her photo with me to share the experiences. The time had come for the final phase of my plan. I decided to host a birthday party for myself at my new home, inviting Melissa, James, Frederick, and Patricia, and a few genuine friends from my factory days and community center. The stage was set for revelations and hopefully reconciliation. The invitations I sent were simple but elegant. "Albert Mercer requests the pleasure of your company to celebrate his 64th birthday." I included details for a Saturday evening gathering at my home with dinner and drinks provided. Melissa called immediately after receiving hers. "Dad, this is wonderful. Do you need help planning or setting up?" "I have it handled," I assured her. "Just bring yourselves." "Can we contribute anything, wine, dessert?" "Just your company is fine. I said, touched by her enthusiasm even as I recognized its recent emergence. The day of the party arrived with perfect early autumn weather. I had hired a local catering company, a bartender, and a pianist to provide background music. The menu featured upscale comfort food, prime rib roasted salmon, gourmet mac and cheese, and an assortment of seasonal vegetables and desserts. Melissa and James arrived first, helping with final arrangements and greeting guests as they arrived. Frederick and Patricia came next, bearing an expensive bottle of champagne and a birthday gift wrapped in silver paper. "Albert, this is quite the spread," Frederick commented, looking around approvingly at my home. "You have done well for yourself." My former co-worker Sam arrived with his wife Ellen. I had worked alongside Sam for over 30 years, and he had been a loyal friend through good times and bad. They were followed by 3 couples from my community center volunteer group. Simple, honest people who had been kind to me during the difficult years after Lisa's death. The contrast between my old friends and the Richardson contingent was stark but enlightening. Sam and the others were visibly impressed by my new home but treated me exactly as they always had. The Richardsons and their friends were overly solicitous, as if my changed circumstances had transformed my basic worth as a human being. Dinner was served buffet-style on the patio with tables set up overlooking the pond. The conversation flowed pleasantly with my factory friends, sharing humorous stories about our working days, much to the forced interest of Frederick, who kept trying to steer the conversation toward investment opportunities. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. I had arranged for the television to be on tuned to a news channel with the volume low. As the evening progressed, I kept an eye on the clock and the TV. At precisely 9:30 p.m., the local news began. I casually increased the volume just as the anchor said, "Coming up next, we finally meet the mysterious winner of the $130 million Mega Millions jackpot from earlier this year." "Oh, how interesting," I remarked innocently. "Let's watch for a moment if no one minds." The room quieted as the news segment began. The reporter explained that while the winner had initially claimed the prize anonymously, through a trust, they had now agreed to a limited interview without revealing their identity directly. The screen showed footage of the lottery headquarters, then cut to a shadowy figure identified only as the $130 million winner. The figure's voice was altered, but the story was unmistakable. "The winning ticket was a Father's Day gift," the disguised voice said. "Given without much thought, but it turned out to be life-changing." I watched Melissa's face as recognition slowly dawned. Her eyes widened, her hand flew to her mouth. She turned to look at me, shock written across her features. "Dad," she whispered, was that your ticket?" The room went completely silent. All eyes turned to me. "Yes," I said simply. "The lottery ticket you gave me for Father's Day won $130 million. Frederick choked on his drink. Patricia froze with her dessert fork halfway to her mouth. James stared open-mouthed. My old friends looked equally stunned. But why did not you tell me?" Melissa stammered, her face flushed. "It has been months." "I needed time," I replied. "Time to process what happened, time to make plans, and time to see how people would treat me when they thought I had come into a little money versus how they treated me when I was just a factory worker." Frederick recovered first, his business instincts kicking in. "Albert, this is extraordinary. We should talk about investment strategies. I have some connections that could really help you manage this windfall." I smiled politely. "Thank you, Frederick, but I have an excellent financial team already." "Dad," Melissa said, tears forming in her eyes. "I cannot believe this. That $3 ticket. I just grabbed it last minute at the convenience store. I did not even think." "I know," I said gently. That is actually why I wanted to have this conversation tonight. I looked around the room at the gathered faces. For 38 years, I worked on an assembly line. My hands are permanently calloused. My back is damaged from the physical labor. I missed school plays and soccer games because I was working overtime to pay for my daughter's education. I drove the same car for 15 years because a college fund was more important than a new vehicle. I turned to Melissa directly. I never complained because providing for you and your mother was the greatest privilege of my life. When your mother died, you were my only close family, the most precious person in my world. Melissa was crying openly now. James put his arm around her, his own expression troubled. Then something changed, I continued. After you married into the Richardson family, I became someone to be embarrassed about. My career was something to gloss over. My home was not good enough for you to visit regularly. My company was only worth your time on obligatory holidays. Dad, that is not true, Melissa protested weakly. It was true, I corrected gently. And it became crystal clear on Father's Day when you gave Frederick a $12,000 cruise package and me a $3 lottery ticket, in front of everyone. Patricia had the grace to look down at her hands. Frederick shifted uncomfortably. James looked ashamed. But here is the strange part, I continued. That thoughtless gift turned out to be worth $130 million. And suddenly my house is worth visiting. My company is worth keeping. Frederick wants to golf with me. Patricia remembers my birthday. Albert, Frederick began, but I held up my hand. I do not say this to be cruel, I said. I say it because there is a powerful lesson here for all of us. The lottery ticket revealed something important, how quickly our perception of a person's worth can change based on their financial status. But it also revealed something beautiful, how meaningless those external measures truly are. I turned back to Melissa, who was wiping her eyes. Honey, I do not blame you for being impressed by the Richardson lifestyle. It is impressive. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that true wealth is not measured in dollars. Your mother and I tried to teach you that a person's worth comes from their character, their kindness, their integrity, not their bank account or address. Sam, my old factory buddy, spoke up. Al has always been rich in the ways that matter. Best damn friend and coworker a person could ask for. Thank you, Sam, I smiled. The lottery did not make me a better person. It just gave me financial security. I am still the same Albert who worked the assembly line. Still the same dad who loves his daughter more than anything. I am so sorry, Dad, Melissa said, her voice breaking. I have been horrible to you. I got caught up in everything and lost sight of what matters. That ticket. I grabbed it as an afterthought. I knew it was inadequate. I was embarrassed even giving it to you, but I did not make time to get something better. And yet it was the most valuable gift I have ever received, I replied. Not because of the money, but because it showed me exactly where things stood. It gave me clarity. What will you do with the money? James asked, finally finding his voice. I have already been doing it, I answered. I have set up scholarships for children of factory workers, made donations to the hospital that cared for your mother, established a foundation to support vocational training. And yes, I have bought myself this comfortable home and taken care of my health needs, but the vast majority of the money is going toward making a difference in lives like mine was before the lottery. Frederick looked genuinely confused. But surely you will invest significantly, build a legacy, perhaps buy a vacation property or two. I shook my head. My legacy is not in property or investment portfolios, Frederick. It is in the values I tried to instill in my daughter. It is in the honest work I did for almost 4 decades. It is in the love I shared with my wife and the community I am part of. The room fell silent again, but it was a different quality of silence, reflective rather than shocked. Melissa stood up and came to me, kneeling by my chair. "Dad, can you forgive me? I lost my way. I forgot what you and Mom taught me about what really matters." I took her hands in mine. "There is nothing to forgive, honey. You are still finding your path. We all make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them." "I have learned," she said firmly, "and I want to help with your foundation. Use my marketing skills for something meaningful." I hugged her close, feeling a weight lift from my heart. This was the daughter I had raised, finding her way back to the values Lisa and I had tried to instill. The party continued, more subdued, but with a new authenticity. Frederick was quieter, Patricia more genuine. James engaged in a real conversation with Sam about factory work, asking thoughtful questions about the experience. As guests began to leave, Melissa and James stayed behind. When we were alone, Melissa asked the question I had been expecting. "Dad, are you going to share the money with us?" I appreciated her directness. "I have already set up a trust for you," I said. "Not an amount that would change your lifestyle dramatically, but enough to provide security and perhaps allow you to pursue work that fulfills you rather than just pays well." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "That is more than fair. To be honest, after tonight, I would understand if you had decided not to share any of it." "You are my daughter," I said simply. "I will always want to provide for you. But the greatest gift I can give you is not money, but perspective on its true value." As they prepared to leave, James surprised me by saying, "I have been thinking about leaving my father's business, finding something that is mine, not just handed to me. Would you be willing to talk with me about that sometime?" "Any time," I replied, seeing a new thoughtfulness in his eyes. After they left, I stood on my back patio looking at the stars. I imagined Lisa beside me, her hand in mine as it had been for so many years. "I think we raised her right after all," I whispered to the night sky. "She just needed a little reminder." 1 year after winning the lottery, my life had found a new rhythm. The media frenzy around my win had died down. I had maintained my privacy for the most part, giving only that one anonymous interview to satisfy public curiosity. My name was public record, but without publicity stunts or extravagant purchases, I had largely avoided unwanted attention. The most meaningful change was in my relationship with Melissa. After the revelation at my birthday party, she had gone through a period of profound self-reflection. She and James had moved out of the house Frederick had given them and purchased a more modest home in a mixed-income neighborhood. James had indeed left his father's business, starting a small consulting firm, helping local businesses with sustainable practices. Melissa had reduced her hours at the marketing firm to split her time between paid work and volunteering as the communications director for my foundation, which we had named the Lisa Mercer Memorial Foundation. Her professional skills had helped expand our reach and impact considerably. Frederick and Patricia had eventually come around, though the relationship remained somewhat strained. Frederick had difficulty understanding my approach to wealth. "You could live like a king," he would say, bewildered by my modest choices. Patricia had shown more growth, actually volunteering occasionally at the community center, where I still spent time. The foundation had become my primary focus and greatest joy. We had expanded from educational scholarships to include medical assistance for working families, community improvement projects in factory neighborhoods, and retirement support for long-term manufacturing employees facing healthcare challenges. I had traveled some visiting places Lisa and I had dreamed about, always carrying her photo. I went to the Grand Canyon, where the vastness helped put life in perspective. I saw Paris in the spring, remembering how Lisa had cut pictures from travel magazines and imagined us there someday. I visited the coastal town in Maine, where we had spent our only real vacation, a long weekend, for our 10th anniversary. These trips brought both joy and a bittersweet awareness of her absence. I often found myself turning to share a beautiful sight, only to remember she was not physically beside me. My health had improved significantly with proper care. The back problems that had plagued me for decades were managed through physical therapy and appropriate treatment. I had lost weight, gained strength, and had more energy than I had enjoyed in years. But the most profound change was internal. The lottery win had forced me to confront questions about value, worth, and legacy. What did it mean to be rich? What constituted a life well lived? I found my answers not in the numbers in my bank account, but in the relationships that endured regardless of financial status. Sam and my other factory friends treated me exactly the same as they always had. We still met for coffee, still talked about sports and politics, still helped each other with home projects. The foundation work brought me into contact with families facing the same struggles mine had. Seeing their dignity, resilience, and love for each other reminded me daily of what truly mattered. As for the money itself, I had found that beyond a certain point of comfort and security, additional wealth added little to my happiness. The joy came not from possessing it, but from using it purposefully. On this particular evening, I was hosting a small gathering at my home. Melissa and James were coming for dinner along with Sam and Ellen and two other couples from the foundation board. It was nothing formal, just friends sharing a meal and conversation. I watched from my kitchen window as Melissa's car pulled into the driveway. She emerged carrying a homemade apple pie, Lisa's recipe that she had recently learned to make. James followed with a bottle of wine and a board game we all enjoyed. Seeing them walk toward my door, laughing together about something, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The lottery had not created this moment, but it had helped clear the path to it. The money itself was far less valuable than the lessons it had taught us all. When I opened the door, Melissa hugged me tightly, whispering, "Love you, Dad," in my ear. No pretense, no agenda, just genuine affection. Later, as we all sat around my dining table sharing stories and laughter, I looked at the faces gathered there. None of them were with me because of my bank account. They were there because of shared values, mutual respect, and genuine connection. I had won the lottery twice, I realized. Once with a ticket, and once with the understanding that followed. The money would eventually be gone, distributed to causes that mattered to me, and to the daughter who would carry those values forward. But the wisdom gained would endure, passed from generation to generation, a different kind of wealth altogether. As I looked around at the people I loved, I knew with certainty that this was the truest measure of a rich life. Not the houses or cars or vacations, but the moments of authentic connection. Not the dollars in an account, but the difference made in lives touched. My daughter had given me a $3 lottery ticket that won $130 million. But the real gift had been the journey that followed the restoration of what mattered most and the chance to share these lessons with others. To family. I proposed a toast, raising my glass. Not just those related by blood, but those connected by something deeper. To the wealth that cannot be measured or spent. To family. They echoed, glasses clinking around the table. In that moment, I felt Lisa's presence more strongly than ever, and I knew she would have been proud of where we had all landed. What is your relationship with your children? Do you feel appreciated for your sacrifices? Has money ever changed how people treated you? Let me know in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about life's unexpected lessons. Remember, sometimes the smallest gifts can change everything. Thank you for listening, and may you find true wealth in the people and moments that matter most.